Hello, good evening and welcome to my humble model at Bedstead Junction. Now tonight I've added some additional decorations to the layout and we'll be seeing that quite shortly. And today is a day which the country's been celebrating the coronation of King Charles III, the crowning of Queen Charles III in Camilla. And I've been watching that today on the television. Very historic day for us. And I thought about today what kind of theme my railway would take on, and of course it had to be Kings, didn't it? Kings. So what I'm going to be showing you tonight is my full collection of Kings and one additional locomotive which I'm going to be bringing into the video because of its name, and you'll see why I think that's appropriate. So without any further ado, let's get underway on the day of the coronation of our King Charles III. Thank you. So what I've done is I've covered the side of my layout in Union Jack bunting. So, hope you agree, that looks rather patriotic for today. There's a controller waiting. The station's waiting to see the trains go round. And now, without any further ado, we'll get underway, and the next thing you'll do, you'll see the first train in action. Right, so now the first locomotive we can see going around tonight is a model bike orderly from the late 1970s. So it's tender powered. So really the motor in the tender is actually pushing the loco along, but you couldn't really tell that, can you, watching it go round? Now, it's a model which will be less detailed than today's offerings. Yes, that's true. And also, as a consequence of that, it's not more robust. You can pick this locomotive up and play with it. And in fact, this locomotive has survived from 1979 to the present day, 2023, in quite good condition. Picked this up relatively inexpensively from eBay, and it really needed more sort of oiling. It probably hadn't been used for quite some considerable time, and so it required a little bit of oiling, freeing up of the locomotive wheels and things. Nosy running around quite well now. Very nice model. To be honest with you, I mean, let's be honest about some of the things. Now, I did a previous video on this particular model, and some of the detailed things which some people might find sort of a bit controversial today. The steam pipes are part of the moulding between the boiler and the footplate and the running plates. They're actually moulding on details, and also the actual boiler continues down to the actual running plate. There's no gap underneath. And in fact, that was probably the biggest complaint about this particular model, but it's still a very lovely looking locomotive. I had this one originally in the early 1990s, and I sold it because I was modding BR. Okay, this in Great Western livery. And we'll be seeing the other King Edward I in just a moment. Now, we'll give it a little bit of a further run round, and then we'll run her in, and then the next thing you'll see is another King Edward I. But let's bring King Edward I in, closer to the camera, and we'll have a little look. Let me see if we can get. We're quite close to the controller, so getting a good view might be a little bit difficult. Let's get down there now. Ah, there we go. Got the controller there. And you can see more or less a bird's eye view of this now. I think what we would do, we would lower the tripods ever so slightly, I think. And then we'll do that for the rest of the video as well. So, let's have a look. There we go. Okay, so now it's got the usual copper cap chimney. That's well represented on here. The brass safety valve, I think that's part of the moulding in plastic, but that's right. They've got the whistles on the back there. The cab vents are not movable, but this one does have cab glazing. Okay, so this does have an advantage over the model which you're going to see next. Okay, so let's bring this one round and we'll run this into the station, and I'm going to also, and pardon the pun, I'm going to make a point about points, because I've had some locomotives which have had trouble negotiating this point here, and they required some alteration. And you're going to see now this one go around here now and tackle these points without any problem whatsoever. And it's been, in my opinion, on a couple of these now that I've come to, it's not my points, it's not my layout, not the fact the track's not pinned down. It was design limitations in the locomotives themselves, and on both of those locomotives, it was problems with the tender and the locomotive itself. But there's one here. Let's have a look. Let's watch this one go in. Over those points without any clicking, any jumping, any sort of nonsense. There we go. In it goes, the lovely King Edward I. There we go. In it is. So about my lack of control on the controller there. I'm trying to do operate the camera and the controller at the same time. Now, the next locomotive we're going to see, which is just beyond King Edward I, is by Lima. And it's King George V. Okay, and we're talking about King George V. And this King George V has got a bearing on our recent history of Britain. And we should go into that quite shortly. Now we just have a quick change of points. Now remember, this model just beyond there is by Lima. Now while they're together, perhaps we can talk about a couple of differences on here, because they've got plus and minus points, both models. Some people may have regarded the Lima model to be superior. Some people may have regarded the Hornby model to be superior. It's all a matter of preferences and what you need. You get cab glazing on this one, you don't on the Lima. Okay, but when I can't get the code on this one here, there's no gap between the boiler and the running plate there, whereas this one here is properly represented on this Lima model. Just set the points and away we go. And again, this model is a very nice little runner. You can see over the points, no problem at all. Stop her up by the signal box there. And then we'll see King George V get underway. Magnificent King George V. Now you probably will notice that the Lima model is a little bit more noisy than the Hornby one. Okay, to me that's not a problem. I was used to locomotives doing this. I've been modelling since the early 1990s, and even back then I was a lot of us were buying models from the 70s and 80s to run on our layouts. This one I picked up on eBay quite reasonably. I think I paid about £30 for this one. Now, what is the main problem with these locomotives, or potentially that you need to watch out for? Probably the Mazak problem. Mazak is a kind of an alloy which they use. Now, is it just Lima? Almost all manufacturers have suffered from the dreaded Mazak rot, and it's down to very often a manufacturing defect in the production of the metal. Now what happens is that the metal will swell and in some cases eventually crumble. You can sometimes get Mazak parts fall apart in your hand. This one, where the problem was with this one is the weight. Now there's a large weight inside the locomotive to give it some adhesion. It doesn't need it for traction. It needs it because it's being pushed around again by the tender power. But obviously the wheels need to be free to rotate. Now when I first got this, the wheels were not rotating. Or not rotating very well. And it was because the weight that's inside the locomotive had swollen slightly, and it was pushing the locomotive sort of out onto the wheels. The wheels were getting caught against the side of the locomotive. So I followed down the weight, and now it fits perfectly. With a lot of tender loving care and oiling, our magnificent King George V is now fully operational. King George V lived from 1865 to 1936, and it does actually have a bearing on one of our other models which we'll be seeing, and the king that it's named after, and that will become apparent as we get further into the video. Now King George V, he was king from 1910 to 1936. Now 1936, that was the time of the Great Depression, and also the fact that in many ways gives us a sense that war was looming. The Second World War began, for us at least, in 1939, so only 3 years after the passing of King George V. This one here is quite an interesting one too. It's got a bell on the front. Now the bell is to commemorate this the actual locomotive, let's say, visit the Baltimore and Ohio Railway in the 1920s. Okay, and when it was there, it was given a bell on the front. And if you ever buy a model of King George V, second hand at least, please make sure it's got the bell on there, because I have seen them without the bell and it's not right. I don't know why somebody would remove the bell, but there we go. Okay, I did see one on eBay without the bell. It's got to have a little bell on the front, and we'll have a look at that in a minute. Actually, it's tender powered. What you can hear there, really as it is on a lot of locomotives of its time, it's not the motor that's noisy, really, in my opinion. It's the gearing between the motor and the driving wheels. But it's not too bad. I think it's quite a nice little runner, really. We're putting 3 GWR coaches on each train tonight, and these can still be found in the Hornby Railroad range. And you see, we're up until fairly recently, and I was able to buy mine a couple of years ago on Amazon. At least 2 of these coaches. Some of these coaches actually were bought by me in the mid-1990s. Just to give you an idea about when how long these models have been in the Hornby range. Very nice coaches. Now King George V, there was briefly Edward VIII. Okay, we'll go into Edward VIII a little bit more. George VI, and then obviously Elizabeth II, and then Charles III, who was actually crowned today to witness the King's coronation. And if you notice, actually, I hope you do, down my side of my layout I've got bunting. Okay, Union Jack bunting to celebrate the coronation of King George III. And we'll go handheld and have a little look at that in a second. Now we're going to bring King George V into the station in just a moment. So I've just knocked the tripod then. My fault. A bit clumsy tonight, a bit fingers and thumbs here, I think. Right, so we'll watch it go through the country station, and then we'll watch it go into the past the signal box and into the junction. For those of you who wonders why this railway is called Bedstead Junction, well, it's quite apparent up there, isn't it? You can see, quite obvious now, isn't it, looking down there. Okay, so let's have a quick change of points. And again, what I would say is about points, this locomotive flies over this point without any problems whatsoever. Okay, and then we'll just have a look at that now. And then we'll be moving into our third locomotive of the evening. Now I want to bring in King George V. And then we're going to be seeing another King Edward I. Now why that is, I mean, you'll see why I'm doing that in just a moment. Okay, so over those points, that's a Lima model now. Over those points, no problem at all. So, you know, I mean, I've seen other people having trouble with their layouts. People have said, oh, it's the points, so and that sort of thing. I would say very often, it's best to look at the locomotives and try and see why they're derailing. If it's particular locomotives, then why should you be blaming the point? And in this particular instance, nothing wrong with this point. Okay, so let's have a look. Okay, so let's look at these two locomotives together. I'm just going to switch the camera off just briefly, just stop recording, and then we're going to have a quick look at our next locomotive. Right, now the locomotive we see going around now is another locomotive by Hornby. Now, you need to forgive me for the condition of this model slightly, because it does live on one of my shelves. It's one of the unboxed models that I bought. And it's got an interesting history, okay? Interesting history, and it's worth going into. Now, to some of you, you might think, well, this doesn't compare with the King that we've got out today. And yes, you'd be right to say that. In many, many ways, that's true. But this model has got many improvements and enhancements made over our previous King Edward I. Now, King Edward I, in Great Western livery, the one you saw first of all, that is a very, very nice model, yes. But the owner of this King Edward I carried out some big, big modifications. Now, you would say, well, okay, how can this be King Edward I? They don't look anything like the King Edward I we've just seen a moment ago. Okay, so we'll explain about what's happened to this model. Now, where did I see this model? Now, this is going back over many, many years now. And I've mentioned this before. I used to frequent a model shop called Trains of Bristol. Some of you from the Bristol area might remember Derek and his little shop in Bedminster. And okay, I bought quite a fair few second-hand locomotives from him while I was starting out, and this is one of them. And it was sat there in the glass case, and I wanted a King. I was modelling BR livery. Okay, so bear that in mind. I was modelling BR livery, and I saw this one, and he explained to me about a little bit of the history of the model, and we'll go into that for quite short now. Another thing too about these kind of model shops, and we're talking about this, but for Bristolians, some of you might remember some of these model shops going back over a period of time. There was Trains of Bristol run by Derek. There was Max Williams on Lawrence Hill in Bristol. Another shop which is now sadly closed as well, called Modern Mania. Okay, but these kind of shops, you can literally go there, especially with Trains of Bristol and Max Williams. And you can end up talking for hours. You can walk in there and be talking about trains and about railways and subjects, and you can find that an hour is gone. And maybe it's all you bought is a piece of track or maybe a model kit or something. And yeah, a great places to while away the hours. I mean, it gives us convenience to buy models from eBay, and I did during the pandemic. I started to buy models from eBay. But really, in many ways, it would be nice to maybe have a model shop like that where you can go and talk about trains again. Now, we've already talked about King Edward I, so let's have a closer look at this model, shall we? You might not be able to see all of the differences straight away, but we'll go through them. I think what we'll do is we'll try to arrange it so we've got a full view of this particular model. Right, so into the station, and again over the points we go. Again, it's a tender powered locomotive. Sorry, just collided with the back of that train there. Don't know that happened. Okay, here we go. Right, so we're in. Let's have a look and see why that happened there. Oh, okay, that's strange. Right, okay. The wonders and joys of live recording. Hey, don't you just love it? Well, I think that's going to be a job for the remailer. Well, no, it's on there now. Right. Let's get back to my comparison. Ah, there we go. We can see this quite well now. Both models quite well here. This King Edward I was once just like this. Okay, and this sometimes kind of emphasise the hours of work that people can be putting into things. What this particular individual did with this model was he changed it from Great Western to British Rail Early Crest. Also, the correct steam pipes were added on. I don't know if you can see that there, but the correct steam pipes were added on. Let's zoom in a little, shall we? Let's have a look, that's better. So, yeah, the correct steam pipes are on there. Right, those steam pipes were moulded onto into the model. Also, he added a couple of lamps just here. And probably one of the, and changed the livery completely into BR green. And also, he managed to fashion a double chimney. If you see, the King Edward I just down here has got a single chimney, and this one up here has a double chimney. So I thought I wanted to show you this because, and what he done as well, he cut away the space under the boiler, or some of the space under the boiler, so that looks more realistic. He's also put on separately fitted brake handles and water scoop handles on the tender. So all in all, this person created a very, very nice model. I say I picked this up in the early 1990s, and that's what some modelers had to do if they wanted to alter this King Edward I to look like this King Edward I. Okay, so what we'll do then is we'll take this locomotive off. We're going to have a change of locomotive, and again we'll you'll see another locomotive on the track quite shortly. Right, now the last and final locomotive you see go around the track is really what many people would call the full fat king. This is Hornby's most recent effort at building the King Class, or one of the more recent. Very much a more highly detailed model than anything you've seen before on the track so far. And again, I picked this one up on eBay, and it came in practically perfect condition. So it ran perfectly well out of the box. You can see it's running well now. Go around the track. King Edward VIII. King Edward VIII had a very, very short reign. He was only king from January 1936 to December 1936. And he actually advocated in order to marry an American divorcee called Wallace Simpson. And once he'd advocated, I think he took very much a back seat. The next monarch to come to the throne was King George VI. He was king from December 1936 to 1952, when he sadly passed away. King George VI obviously was the king who took us through the Second World War. In fact, I think it's important to talk about on a Coronation Day. You know, some of the interesting small little details. Of course, you've got Queen Victoria, who was queen up until 1901, and Queen Victoria was on the throne really right from the beginning of the railways. And Queen Victoria took up rail travel. I do believe that the actual word train was only allowed to go at a certain speed, but she did actually travel by train, and that sort of began the tradition of the royal coaches and things and royal trains. And of course that was a time of great industrial change. I mean, the railways came during Victoria's reign. When Victoria passed away in 1901, she was then succeeded by Edward VII. And he was king then up until, let's have a look, King Edward VII. He was king up until 1910. So he went a very, very short reign from 1902 to 1910. Now, during the reign of King Edward VII, of course, that's where you saw the transition between Broadgate on the Western Railway, also the origination of the locomotives by George Jackson Churchward, who actually achieved a great bit of standardisation on the Great Western Railway, and that's where you saw the foundation of a lot of our really famous locomotives. So George Jackson Churchward was very much of the Edwardian age. Now, you then had King George V, who you stood the train, you saw the locomotive, you saw the bell on the front, the lever one. And he was king from 1910 to 1936. Then Edward VIII, who was only king for less than a year. George V, who was king until 1952. Elizabeth I, who reigned for 70 years. And then finally, we come to our coronation of King George III, which took place today. That gives you a context of, and of course, a lot of our railway history, during the different reigns, a lot of important things happen railway-wise, as you can see. Now, this model, very much greatly more detailed. It's got separately fitted smoke box darts. The coal load, the sparkly coal load. It's in late BR livery. Got a double chimney as a result. The double chimney was added really to get more power out of the locomotive, and also to enable the locomotives to run on lower quality coal. People have to remember that when Queen Elizabeth II came to the throne, they were still rationing. And also in the early 1950s, Britain was involved in the Korean War. Again, another great piece of history. Now here we see Edward VIII. I just thought Edward VIII was an interesting monarch. He was only king for a very, very short period of time. And I think he's the only king pardon me, looking at coffee, were actually voluntarily advocated. Now we're going to bring this King Class into the station and we'll have a look at her in just a moment. I tend to, even though locomotives are called Kings and Queens, I always call them her for some reason. Might be a Somerset thing, I don't know. But anyway, here we go. Let's bring this wonderful locomotive into the station, and we'll talk about some of the differences between this locomotive and the first locomotive you saw on the track, which was the lovely King Edward I. Right, now then, quick change of points, and we'll put into the station. And I think it's a nervous moment actually, because it's the first time I may have tried this one over my new point, so we'll see how it does. Straight over, no problem at all. Okay, so let's bring her into view. Right, okay, so this is the lovely King Edward VIII. Differences between the two models. Pardon me. Right, differences and similarities really. They've got the gobber cap chimney, of course that's a single chimney, that's the double. Glazed windows. You didn't get the route marking on here above the cab number. But let's just zoom out slightly so we can see them both together. That's it. There we go. We can talk about this a bit more now. Ooh, pardon me. Right. Okay. So you didn't get the route marker here, whereas on here you got the route marker just above there. You can just about see it. It's double red. Which means that this could only run on really the most strongly built main lines. And in fact, it was only able, the King's were only allowed to be built because the civil engineer actually allowed it after the strengthening of many of the bridges on the Great Western Railway. So the Great Western Railway had to be strengthened to carry these Kings. On here you've got moulded steam pipes on there represented. Okay, they're there, but they're moulded into the locomotive. On here they're shown as proper outside steam pipes. And you've also got, I don't think you'll be able to see it from here, but you've got a representation in there in red of the valve gear. So it's a very, very much more finely detailed model. Of course, one of the things that a lot of people will be asking is about sprung buffers. No, back in the 1970s you didn't get them, but you do on this. Sprung buffers. I think really, I think both models, I mean, even though this one is much more of a less detailed model, okay, and it did have some shortcomings model-wise, okay, and it does, there's no denying it, it's still a very, very nice looking locomotive, and I think I'm just as happy to have this in my collection. I mean, some people may disagree with me on that one, but they both got their merits. This one's tender powered with the Hornby Wingfield motor. Okay, sorry about my big arm getting in the way there. And this one has got the motor inside the locomotive, so a lot of people would regard that as being a little bit more realistic. Also, there's a lot more representation of pipework under the cab as well. So on the later Hornby model, and I think the whistles are more closer together there. Some might be more prototypical. Of course, if you watch the Hornby series, you know, featuring Simon Kohler, he was talking about detail, and yeah, they do go into a lot of detail, and yes, these models are much more detailed nowadays. Well, I think we have to. I think there's two different reasons why you would have a locomotive. One is maybe to look at the detail, in which case some people might want to put them into an exhibition case. Right, so some people might want their models out on the track and play with them. And I mean, a model like this, to be fair, this will take a hammering. It's got very much, as you can see from here, the valve gear and everything else, and the slide bars, that's all much more robustly built. I mean, I don't think a child's fingers are going to break that. Not easily anyway. And the connection rods are probably a lot more thicker. Whereas on here, on the later King model, we'll get into focus there if we can. That's a lot more finely detailed on here, on the valve gear and everything else. And this is a fantastic model. I mean, this one here is a fantastic model. Would I recommend the Hornby King, the present Hornby King? Yes. Yes, I would happily recommend it to you. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put our Hornby King back onto the track, and then we'll watch it run around the layout, and you'll see my layout. I'm going to go handheld for a while as well, before we say farewell to you. So I've got any of my facts mixed up about our Kings, and you know, the dates and everything else. It is getting quite late now today, and it's been quite a long day leading up to me making this video. Let's say to celebrate King Charles III. Let's just put this one into reverse, and we'll bring it back up the station. There we go. Fantastic, look at that. Wow, look at that. Look at that. Will you take a look at that? This is the present Hornby King. Watch it go round. And then we're going to do some handheld shots, and then you can see how I've actually set up my layout today for the coronation. Right, so I think as you can see down here, there's bunting all around the layout. We'll go handheld for a while. Then we can see some views we don't normally see. There we are, so it's bunting all down the side of the layout. I think the sellotape's holding. There we are, so looking very, very patriotic. Oh dear, we seem to have, our sellotape seems to have come undone just round here. Sorry about this. Let's see if we can glue this back on again. Oh dear. Well, we'll drape that over the edge. There we are. That's looking just as patriotic, isn't it? Okay, oh, it's a little bit of a tape job, this. Going around the layout, as you can see. Union Jack bunting. We've got our King Edward VIII running around the track here now. King Edward I. And this is to celebrate the coronation of King Charles III, okay? I want to say on the now, thank you very, very much for watching. If you like what you see, please press the like button and subscribe if you've not subscribed before. Thank you very, very much for watching and for your interest. Thank you for those of you who stayed to the end. And we'll just say one last little thing before we say goodbye. And of course, this is for the coronation of our King today, the crowning of Charles III and Camilla. God save the King. Okay, God save the King. And on that note, I wish you farewell and good night.